Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare?
Oh my god! Oh my god! Lock the door! Lock the door!
They're coming! They're coming! Help! Help! They're coming! They're coming!
Emma, welcome back to my channel. It is such an honor to have you back. Yes, with your beautiful roses.
They do make too much noise, so they do have to go away. I made them, but then I just throw them on the floor,
Hey, they're durable. They look strong. Oh, careful.
Oh my goodness, hair emergency. It fired back at me. It's like, fuck you.
So for this comparison video, we have chosen Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which has been on my list for quite some time for this series. And actually, we chose this because we'll be talking about the second remake from 1993, simply titled Body Snatchers, on your channel very, very soon, which I'm so excited for. Hell yeah. So... Do you want to talk a little bit about that series that you've got, in the works right now?
Oh, sure. Right now, I'm just making sure I have enough episodes in the bag edited. That's where I'm at. And I have half of the amount of episodes I want to have recorded, done, finished. It's basically my guest chooses a movie that neither of us have seen, and then we discuss it because we love talking about film. And that's pretty much it. I'm not releasing anything till late March, early April. I'm waiting till I have 4 episodes in the bag so I can be very consistent with you guys, but I'm so excited.
Yeah, so you were telling me before we started recording that this will be the first one where you've got kind of ties to this episode of your podcast and then one of your guests' episodes, which is mine, this comparison series, Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Body Snatchers. So with that, were either of these 2 films first-time watches for you? And
No.
How did you like them?
So when it comes to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I have a very kind of deep connection to the first one.
Okay.
My grandmother, who I spent every summer with in New Jersey, she would show me like all the older sci-fi movies and horror movies. Some of them included Hitchcock. And I can't remember if this was my first existential crisis, but it certainly was one of the early ones where it's like, okay, it's not the same body, so it can't be me. And I was so scared. And I probably was about 7 or close to that. And I'm like, I was so scared they were going to take me.
Understandable, yeah. And the remake, the 78 remake, when did you first see that one?
Only a few years ago, because it wasn't available for streaming for the longest time. And then eventually I just bought it. And now it's available for streaming a little bit more. And, God, I love it.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. So if you don't already know Stardust, in both movies, we've got people who are being replaced by alien pod people who lack the ability to feel any emotion, including love. And we have our leads who try to warn everyone and stop the alien takeover. The original takes place in the fictional town of Santa Mira, California, while the remake takes place in San Francisco. Using a non-fiction, bustling location adds a layer of paranoia and showcases the spread of the invasion in a densely populated area, amplifying the film's themes of alienation and dehumanization. Both films are adaptations of Jack Finney's novel, The Body Snatchers. The original was directed by Don Siegel, was written by Daniel Manwaring, and stars Kevin McCarthy, Dana Winter, Carolyn Jones, and King Donovan. The remake is directed by Philip Kaufman and written by W.D. Richter and stars Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, Veronica Cartwright, and Leonard Nimoy. So Emma, how do you think the theme of paranoia and identity are explored differently in the 56 version compared to the 78 remake, considering the original is set during the time of the Red Scare and the remake was set after the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal?
So the idea of what it is that you're afraid getting taken away from you changes, but I think when it comes to the film itself, because some people are like, I don't want to, because there's a lot of debate of the first film either being pro-McCarthyism or anti-McCarthyism, because if you're a communist, you're like this robot that doesn't, or it's if you're just going along with what everyone else thinks is right when we know McCarthyism is wrong. And so it's been and it's also been interpreted about, these two people got divorced, look what happens. I mean, there's I'm not kidding. But it's so, one thing I don't like about the original, even though I enjoy it, is the narration. It bugs me. The beginning and the end bug me. And I know that the studios added the prelude and the intro because it wants to make people feel comfortable. And so, this idea that Kevin McCarthy's character, Dr. Benell, is, maybe he'll be okay because we're calling him the FBI. But it's like, what are the FBI going to do about these pod people? Are you kidding? But I think for a 1955-56 audience, it felt more comfortable that the authorities, because some people had the luxury of being more comfortable with the authorities than others, that they're going to take care of these pod people. But I think that the narration also kind of takes away from the scariness, because we hear his internal voice, which seems kind of film noirish. It's not horribly done, but I guess they were worried people wouldn't understand what's happening.
No, I definitely agree with you about them putting that, beginning and end parts, to make it more of a happier ending for audiences.
It's not a happy ending. The FBI can't do shit. It's true. Like, what are they going to do? They can't get rid of maybe they could set fire to a bunch of them, but there's always going to be one.
Yeah, and it does take away some of the horror, because you kind of feel like that in the end, it is going to still be horrible, like you said, for the FBI, but at least they're coming together and not just sitting back and letting it happen necessarily, because, we get into the remake, and like you were mentioning before,
not like today, where they're like, whatever.
Yep. You've got people running around in the background before our leads really know what's going on, even though, we as the audience, we kind of know that those people are probably running from the pod people, or they are pod people themselves, just based off our knowledge from the first movie, but it still creates that tension with the, Dutch angles and just a
lot of open shots. And then I'm sorry, I talked.
Oh, no, you're fine. No,
a lot of the open shots that they use in the 1978 version makes it feel more like the 56 version. They don't use a lot of open shots, of the idea that there's no one's perspective, but like a looming presence, and that's us, the audience, kind of seeing them in their homes and just observing. And one thing that I think is a very important scene in the 78, which we will talk more about, the 50s one, of course, but is that it seems so little. It's when Brooke Adams as Elizabeth and Donald Sutherland, they have a moment where he's just cooking food and they're like joshing around. She is saying, my husband, something's wrong with him. And he's like, whatever. Because I mean, what are you going to say necessarily? Maybe the dude's having an off day or an affair. Who knows? And so they have this little stir fry on the back of his porch, and it's nice to see this very human interaction. And we know that he's in love with her, and she's probably has some kind of reciprocating feelings. And it's really important to see that human element between them, even though it's not necessary. So something that seems unimportant becomes important.
No, it is. Totally. Definitely. Like, that just solidified for the audience just how human they are, especially with her moving her eyes all strange. Because, you're not going to be able to do that or care to do that once you've become a pod person. As far as like the different moods and atmospheres, in the first one, we have Dr. Benell, who is more friendly and he's rooted in his neighborhood. He's a small town doctor. He's a community leader. He's rational. He's calm. And then we see him go from disbelief to terror to action, where he's fighting, outside forces to protect his people. And this mirrors the fear of losing individuality and autonomy. And this is what heightens the film's tension and aligns with the broader allegorical implications of McCarthyism and the fear of infiltration. Like I said before, he's also gathering his friends, which, to fight off this outside force, which pushes for collective vigilance and resistance against, a threat. While we have, on the other hand, in the remake, Matthew, he's more cosmopolitan, he's detached, and, he's a health inspector who follows the law. And his development from someone who upholds the law to being deeply embroiled in a conspiracy reflects the public's growing distrust of government institutions that were happening at that time in the 70s. And this reflects society's shift towards skepticism and disillusionment with authoritative figures following the Vietnam War and Watergate. His transformation is more psychological and emphasizes the internal conflicts of confronting an invisible enemy within a modern bureaucratic society.
If it's a caper, eat it.
That part is
but I love that they're shooting the restaurant owner. I'm not an expert on cinematography, even though I noticed some shots. He looks so small, and like Donald Sutherland's just looking down on him.
Yeah.
And then when they smash the front of his car, and it's kind of like the pod things, like when we saw it kind of spread on the leaves. So it's like it's an omen.
I like that interpretation. Hadn't thought of that. Awesome.
And we see Kevin McCarthy again in this movie, the original Dr. Benell. And it's like when things are all like so close to like, oh my God, everybody. And the other Benell, Donald Sutherland, runs into him with his car and he's just yelling, they're coming, they're here. And then we see him bleeding on the ground. And so the director, Kaufman, for the 1978 version, said, I would like to think of that's where Dr. Benell it started in this small town and he's been living this thing has been spreading. I'm like, that's sad, but I like it.
Yes. When I first saw it, I hadn't looked into the movie yet before watching it. And I was like, that guy looks just like Dr. Benell from the first film. And then
was this a first time watch for you, either of them?
Not the second one. The remake was not a first time watch, but I hadn't researched it or looked into the first one or anything like that. So it was a first time watch for me for the original, which I'm super glad I finally watched. I wish I would have watched it sooner. It's great. Loved it.
It's so, again, Don Siegel is one of those directors that is, it's not political. I didn't put anything political in my movie. I didn't do that. It's just supposed to be fun. And then Dirty Harry, also around Watergate that whole time earlier. It was, I think, Dirty Harry came out in 1970 or 1971 after the scary, sexy 60s, is that movie is, there's been a lot of debated about Dirty Harry. I won't go too much into digression, but it's the idea that this film is made for the silent majority, as Nixon would say, that, the older generation was scared of the newer generation and what's going on. And so Dirty Harry's like the bad cop, but not bad cop. He's supposed to be bad. He's actually supposed to be a character that's not good, but they're not successful at that. He seems like too much of a hero. And then, I've heard Don Siegel talk about it in terms of politics and stuff. And then Invasion of the Body Snatchers doesn't have cult. I just don't believe it. I just don't. And if I made a movie and people saw things that I didn't intend to make, I'd be like, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm like, you're smarter than me. I didn't see it. And I made it. So Invasion of the Body Snatchers always felt as super political in the idea of what are the pod people to you? Is it a loss of individuality? Are you assimilated into the Borg, Or is it bigger? It's on the term of like we're complacent in times where we shouldn't be complacent. It could, or divorce, whatever that. I'm not crazy about that interpretation. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just a different interpretation than I would take. But that's film.
I came back from London 2 months ago. I've been in Reno.
Reno?
Reno. Dad tells me you were there too.
5 months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So was I. I wanted it to work.
And they had a contrasting character that I don't think they really have in the original, at least not to this degree, is Veronica Cartwright, who was the little girl in The Birds, and she's later in Aliens. She plays Nancy, and Nancy is, I play music for my plants. Apes were taken into space and had sex with aliens. And now we're here, but she has Chloe Sevigny vibes in this movie.
Sure.
She has like socks. I'm like, oh, I want that pair of socks. And she kind of has like a kooky, like she's a little kooky in a pleasant way. Like she's not like, oh, this is what happened. She's just like, oh, I'm an open mind. So the ending where we see Donald Sutherland after there's been the big commotion of we see these giant pod seeds. They had like the big kind of a conclusion where Elizabeth is gone, or we think she's gone, and we are back with Donald Sutherland at his job. Everyone's just kind of going about their part. But he has these facial emotions, and it starts with him looking at Elizabeth, and she's just doing her job. But it's I didn't expect this. I interpret it as he seems a little sad, like, oh, she's gone. Like he's like hiding really well in this. That's what I thought when I first saw this. And then we see him go to his office. He's clipping something out about paprika or papaya. He's the health inspector, and so we see him kind of go about his day, and we're like, me I should say, I thought he's blending in with the crowd. And then when we see Nancy, our Chloe Sevigny like character, who is the more woo-woo, I like more spiritual things, like she's still herself, and she sees Donald Sutherland and the faith that Donald would be, Matthew Donald would be another one that got out. And then that's like the infamous and she's done. No
She just shakes her head so hard.
I love Nancy. Like if I was one of the characters, I'd be Nancy. I do not believe that theory of how human beings came about, but how do we know?
Yeah, she was the one who was, a believer of aliens in the first place. And so she was one of the first to have her theory right. Like, it is aliens. Those flowers did come from outer space. And I just loved her love for her husband, Jack, Jeff Goldblum. Because especially we have that one scene that we sort of got in the original as well, where he's like, you take the girls and go somewhere safe, and I'm going to go see what the hell is up, basically. And Nancy's like, no, I'm going to go with you. And he's like, no, stay here with them. And then he runs off, but then you just see her follow him. And then you see all the pod people chasing after the two of them. She's like not giving a fuck, and she's wanting to just stay with her man despite probably becoming a pod person. Although we find out later, because we just spoke about the end, that she didn't end up getting captured. He did, and she's still trying to find him. But I just thought that was... Well, that's what he was trying to do, I feel like, but she is right behind him. So why didn't she also get caught? Like, they were together.
Because she's smart. Some people are just smarter than others. It's okay. We do get very similar scenes between our love interests with Donald Sutherland and with the character of Elizabeth, played by Brooke Adams, and then Kevin McCarthy. So she's been fading, and he's begging her not to fall asleep in both versions.
Yeah.
And it happens, and he loses her. Different endings for different of the male characters, but it's cooler in 1978 one, like we see her transform, and then she's just like naked in the field, and she's like, it's much better this way. Matthew, it's much better this way.
I love how they
she's so good at it.
Yeah, they fixed the original's error where obviously she wouldn't have been the same person at the end. Becky falls asleep and then she's immediately a pod person, but in the remake they fixed that where she crumbles and then the actual pod person is just feet away as a new person. So I appreciated that for sure.
Do you think that was like a trap? Because I don't imagine the pod people would, like, they might turn something on because that's what human beings do, but they don't process it. But do you think them playing the music while they're like, they know they're still humans, hiding? Do you think it was a trap to get them to go there? Or do you think they just like, bagpipes?
I think it was probably just a plot device. It was just for the purposes of the movie. I don't think it was deeper than that, but I like that idea because, yeah, the pod people wouldn't have needed music because they don't really care. They don't have emotions. They don't need something to make their job a little bit more easy. But in the original, it was coming from the radio, which made more sense because they were maybe listening for news to see what they might have to do next to like maybe move locations or go capture somebody. But in the remake, there was really no reason for that music to go on other than to attract Benell's character over there. So, yeah.
I mean, hey, the lead singer of Korn and pod people love bagpipes.
Yep, it's true.
What do you think? So what do you think? Like, was a heartbreaking scene was when Leonard Nimoy's character, Dr. Kibner, has caught them both a little bit before they have their run out, and she does perish. But he does inject Matthew Donald Sutherland, and Donald Sutherland says so sadly, and they're saying it's going to be better. You're going to be reborn. I'm like, fuck you, reborn. It's another body. If it's not my body, and it's not going to but he's like, you're killing me. You're killing me, to somebody that was his friend. Yeah. And that was a really emotional thing. And of course, his friend at this point is a pod person. So he feels nothing when his friend for forever says, you're killing me. It's just like nothing. Breakups happen that way,
After he took 5 of the, I guess it was like some type of Adderall pill, then he gets the shot, right after that. So, his heart's just working extra hard with all those drugs in his system. And then just going into more, I guess, of the special effects, I loved how they were showcasing to us that, one person was next because we saw their chapped lips or like their skin kind of peeling off. I thought that was a nice touch to it to kind of see, who exactly was going to be the next pod person. Were there any other scenes that had a big impact on you or that were some of your favorites from either or both movies?
Gosh, I mean, when I was a kid, you really focus on when they're in the greenhouse and they see all the pods and they're just opening them and like they don't.
The original,
they're scared, right? Yeah, the original. They're scared with them. He's with the pitchfork and they're scared to hurt them, which and I'll admit, like I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know what this is, and it's a very human, emotional choice. Like, I don't know what this is. This might not be something bad. And I don't want to immediately kill. And then it has all that soapy goo, and I love that. So I was drawn to that scene.
That's exactly the scene I wrote down for the original too, as my favorite and most impactful for sure. One of the spookier moments for me in the remake is when we see Matthew and Elizabeth trying to just blend into the crowd on the streets, and they're just walking around with their wide eyes and emotionless faces. But as they're walking down the street, some people kind of get a whiff of their human nature and begin chasing them. But this is the point where we're only seeing the pod people's feet, and they're just walking and they slowly start to run. I absolutely love that part. That had some good tension building in it.
Oh, there's great cinematography.
Yeah. Speaking of the cinematography too, I do like how in the remake it has more of a documentary feel to it. Like you were saying, like it's really in your face and it's kind of making you feel like you're in this world. This is what is currently happening. We don't trust the government. We need to, invest in these conspiracy theories and see what the hell is going on. And so I liked that feel of it being kind of more like a fly on the wall aspect.
It really speaks to science fiction being great for when it comes to telling about the future and the present, like Harlan Ellison, Kurt Vonnegut, Ray Bradbury, both Invasion of the Body Snatchers, both speak to what's happening today and what will happen in the future and what was happening in between today and now. And that's one of the things that I think is really special about science fiction that no other genre can beat, especially if it's science fiction horror, which usually there's at least a dab of horror in there.
So out of 5 Rainbow Skulls, how many would you give the original and the remake?
The original, 4.5, just because of, it doesn't matter who did it, just because of the producers meddling with having, an intro and prelude, which really affects the film, and the narration. It doesn't ruin the film, but it takes away a bit of the mystique. But thinking of how, even though it's not political, thinking of how important that was at that time, even if some people didn't realize it, which is fine, you don't have to, but it just the idea of conformity or complacency, seeing things that are going on and doing nothing, can really speaks to a lot. I don't care if it was by accident. It really, especially coming out in the 50s, and they've got the 60s to worry about, man. Easy Riders and what's his name, Charles Manson. They've got a lot to be afraid of. Not more things than that, but so that's the only reason I put a 0.5 star, is because of those things. And then I would give 5 for the remake. I love it. What about you?
I would have to agree. I'm gonna go with a 4.5 Rainbow Skulls for the original. There were some holes in the script. That's my big criticism. There were some logical things that didn't really match up for me there. And then with the remake, I'm going to have to also go with 4 Rainbow Skulls out of 5. I just absolutely love the effects. I love how, we get a little bit darker with this remake, and just the sound design just made it that much more visceral. Like the sound design and it being in color and the effects just made it a visceral experience, which I appreciated. So, yeah.
Good movies.
Yes, very good movies. All right. Well, was there anything else that you would like to plug or let our fellow Stardust know about you or your channel or your podcasts?
Well, my podcast won't come out until spring, but you'll be able to be updated. You can follow my YouTube channel. There's nothing on there, but if I'm on a social media platform, I'm Emma of the Impact. I'm primarily on Instagram, and I'm also Emma of the Impact on YouTube. So you can pre-follow me if you want to.
Yeah, and I'll have all those links down there for you guys at the bottom for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
don't conform, rebel.
Yes, stand alone and together at the same time. All right, Emma, well, this has been awesome. I just want to say thank you again, and I can't wait to be a guest on your channel here very soon.
It's an honor.
Yes. All right, Stardust. Until next time, peace.